Welcome to this explainer. Over the next 4 or 5 minutes, we're going to be moving at a pretty brisk pace to explore some absolutely fascinating and honestly intensely provocative ancient scriptural prophecies. We're diving into the tragic, systematic decline of human morality straight from the pages of ancient texts. It's kind of like looking at an ancient roadmap to understand exactly where these sources predicted humanity is ultimately heading.
Okay, let's dive into this. The big sweeping question we're asking today is, are we living in an era where morality has completely lost its legs? In ancient texts, the concept of the Yugas acts as a sort of cosmic countdown to total moral collapse. It's a cyclical timeline made up of four completely distinct eras, prophesied by figures like Ramchandra and Krishna. Basically, these texts track humanity's descent from a state of absolute spiritual perfection, all the way down into a realm of utter chaos.
So let's quickly chart the first three of these eras. First up, we have the Satya Yuga. 0% sin. And get this, humans are described as literal giants, an astonishing 32 feet tall. Rulers like King Harishchandra gladly sacrifice everything they have for the sake of truth. Next comes the Tretiya Yuga. Sin creeps up to 25%, and human height shrinks down to 21 feet. Then the Dwapar Yuga arrives. It's an exact 50-50 split of virtue and sin. Humans shrink even further to 11 feet, creating a tension that ultimately culminates in the Great Mahabharata War. Notice the stark pattern here? As humanity's percentage of sin goes up, the texts claim our physical stature literally shrinks, directly mirroring our shrinking morality. But here is where everything comes to a screeching halt. According to the texts, Dharma, which represents universal, cosmic righteousness, once stood proudly on four sturdy legs during that perfect first era, kind of like a rock-solid table. But in our current era, which is known as the Kali Yuga, it's plummeted to practically zero. The scriptures tell us that the very foundation of human morality has been completely crippled, leaving absolutely no trace of those original pillars that once held society together. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark ratio projected for the Kali Yuga. The scriptures originally prophesied that this final era would contain 75% sin, leaving just a small, lingering remnant of 25% virtue to keep society functioning. However, some source analyses diving into our current state suggest that even this 25% is nowhere to be found. The reality we might actually be facing right now, just 5% virtue against a staggering, overwhelming 95% of sin. So what does this era of overwhelming sin actually look like on the ground? Well, the ancient texts predict a complete and total social inversion. It's an era driven purely by superficiality. Just a tiny bit of wealth gives people massive, unwarranted arrogance, and personal relationships are dictated entirely by money rather than inner character. The scriptures explicitly state that women will take pride solely in their physical appearance, like their hair, and both men and women will completely abandon their traditional scripts and Vedic rules. It just becomes a society where unrighteous behavior and harsh, bad words become the absolute norm. And this brilliantly illustrates just how extreme this gets. According to texts like the Brahma-Vaivarta Purana and Srimad Bhagavat, the physical degradation hits terrifying levels. They prophesied that human lifespans will drastically collapse, maxing out at just 20 years. They describe an unnatural acceleration of life, stating women will bear children at the age of 5, and people will be considered elderly by 16. Now, I want to emphasize, these are direct, literal translations from ancient texts meant to illustrate the absolute, shocking peak of biological and moral decay, using extreme ancient hyperbole to really drive home how rapidly society might burn itself out. And it's not just the human body that collapses under this weight. It's the entire environment around us. The scriptures paint a remarkably grim picture of planetary decay. Humans will shrink into diseased, dwarf-like states. The earth itself will be ravaged by extreme weather, relentless, fierce winds, torrential rains completely out of season, and unbearable scorching heat. Even nature's daily bounty dries up completely. Cows, once revered for their abundance, will become incredibly small, looking much more like goats and barely yielding any milk at all. As we reach the absolute bottom of this timeline, the peak of adharma, or total unrighteousness, things get incredibly dark. The texts describe a complete dissolution of familial bonds, getting to the terrifying point where fathers and sons will kill each other without a single shred of remorse. People will blatantly boast and praise themselves, and the truly shocking part is that society won't even condemn it. There's going to be a total loss of memory, physical strength, forgiveness, mercy, and purity. Society just completely loses its moral compass. Let's move to and see how this builds into the resolution phase of these prophecies. Because honestly, how does a world like this even survive? According to the texts, there is an ultimate cosmic reset. Amidst all this global destruction, the scriptures say the only true protection is Hari Kirtan, the chanting of the divine name, relying entirely on the power of spiritual sound when all physical structures have failed. And finally, when the moral decay is absolute and lifespans hit that mere 20-year mark, the Kalki avatar is prophesied to arrive, forcefully resetting the cosmic clock and ushering humanity all the way back into the perfect Satya Yuga. It's a rapid, deeply unsettling journey from absolute perfection to total collapse, meticulously detailed thousands of years ago by ancient observers. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final lingering thought. If these ancient texts are a mirror held up to humanity's timeline, what reflection do you see in the world today? Are we already there?